What if I told you that by 2026, the financial reality for the average person in India is going to be, well, a lot tougher than most people think? We're about to peel back the layers of the Indian economy. We're going to go way beyond the big headlines about booming stock markets and billionaires to get to the real numbers, the numbers that actually define the financial lives of millions and millions of people. This isn't the financial state of India we might hope for. This is what the data is telling us. Okay, let's just cut right to the chase with a question that gets to the heart of it all. How much do you think the average person in India really earns in a single month? Seriously, just take a second and guess a number. 50,000 rupees? Maybe 25,000? The real answer? Well, it might just shock you. And there it is, between 12 and 15,000 rupees. That's the average median monthly salary in India. Just let that sink in for a minute. That's about 1.5 lakh rupees for an entire year. And what's so important to get here is that median means that half, literally half of the working population earns even less than this. This single number right here is the foundation for everything we're about to talk about. So to really understand what that number means in real life, we're going to look at this from 6 different angles. We'll start with the income reality itself, then look at the safety net that seems to be disappearing. We'll touch on the huge gap in investing and just basic financial know-how, cover the new risks we all face today, and then tackle the big ones, the retirement crisis, and finally, that massive wealth gap. All right, let's start at the bottom of the pyramid, income. Because it's not just about the money you earn, right? It's about the incredible challenge of actually holding on to any of it. And that national average we just saw, it actually hides a pretty big split. If you're in rural India, that average monthly income is closer to just 10,000 rupees. In the cities, it's higher, around 18,700. This is so important because it shows that for a huge chunk of our population, the financial game isn't about upgrading their lifestyle, it's about day-to-day survival. And that leads us straight into our first huge problem. It's kind of weird when you think about it. People are generally earning more than they used to, but they're saving way, way less of it. We used to have this really strong culture of saving, but that whole habit, it's fading, and it's fading fast. And this chart, wow, it really shows you the scale of this thing. Back in the early 2000s, India's national savings rate was a really healthy 36%. That means 36% of all the economic value we created as a country was being saved. Today, that number has been chopped in half. It's plummeted to around 18%. This is a massive change in how we as a country handle our money. So what does that look like for a regular family? Well, according to several reports, the average total savings for an entire Indian household is just 1 lakh rupees. And let me be perfectly clear, that's not savings per year or per month. That is their entire financial cushion. Think about it. One medical emergency, one person losing their job, and that tiny safety net is just gone. So this brings us to the next level up. When you don't have savings, what do you rely on? Usually debt and insurance. But as we're about to see, these things that are supposed to be safety nets, well, we're starting to look more like traps. What's absolutely staggering here is just how fast this happened. In the early 2000s, household debt was about 10% of India's GDP. Pretty manageable. By 2025, it's expected to explode to 40%. That's a 4 times increase in just over 2 decades. And it makes sense, right? With personal loans, credit cards, and all these instant loan apps, borrowing money went from being a big decision to a dangerously easy habit. And the other safety net, insurance, tells an even scarier story. Can you believe less than 4% of the entire population has health insurance? And when you look at pure life insurance, the kind that's just for protection, it drops to a tiny 1 to 2%. And here's where so many of us get it wrong. We treat insurance like an investment, maybe to save a little on taxes. But that's like using a lifeboat to ship cargo. It might sort of work, but it's not what it's for. And when the storm actually hits, you're left holding a bad investment instead of a tool that could literally save your family. Okay, so if savings are down and debt is up, how are people actually trying to build wealth? This brings us to the next part of the puzzle, the world of investments and the massive, massive knowledge gap that comes with it. This chart pretty much says it all. You can see there's a huge cultural preference here. More than half of an average family's wealth is tied up in real estate. Another 35% is in things that feel safe, like fixed deposits and gold. Now, look at that tiny little sliver down there. Just 4% is in things like stocks and mutual funds. This isn't just about finances. It's a mindset.
We prefer things we can catch, but those things are often impossible to sell quickly in an emergency.
We've all heard this quote, right? We get the idea of compounding in theory, but almost no one experiences its real power. Why? It's simple, really. It needs one thing that young investors just don't have a lot of: patience. They'll invest for a few years, they don't see crazy returns, and they get nervous, not realizing that the real, explosive growth only kicks in after year 7 or year 10.
And this, right here, is the real reason for all of it. A global survey found that only 1 in 4 Indians, just 24%, are financially literate. That means the huge majority of people just don't get the basics. Things like how inflation eats your money, how to manage risk, or how compounding works. And without that, it's pretty much impossible to navigate the financial world. All right, let's talk about the challenges of right now. Because managing your money today isn't just about saving and investing. It's about protecting what you have from all these new risks, like confusing taxes and, of course, very clever scams. The whole tax situation in India is, well, it's interesting. Out of a population of 1.4 billion people, only about 25 million actually file income tax returns. And this leads to a really common and very expensive mistake. People let the tax part drive their decisions. They'll buy a terrible insurance policy or a bad investment just to get a tax benefit, instead of picking a good investment first and then figuring out the taxes. Okay, get ready for a number that's just... it's hard to even imagine. While the official numbers are tough to pin down, some high-end estimates suggest that regular people in India lose up to 1.2 trillion rupees every single year to scams and fraud. And to be clear, we're not talking about some big corporate scandal. This is money being taken directly from the bank accounts of ordinary citizens like you and me. And with AI that can now copy someone's voice perfectly, the threat is getting even more real. But here's a super simple, practical way to fight back. Create a family code word. Just a secret phrase that only your immediate family knows. So if you get a panicked phone call from a loved one asking for money, you stay calm and you just ask for the code. If they can't give it to you, it's a scam. Hang up. It's like a modern-day password for your family's safety. Okay, now we need to talk about one of the biggest long-term problems we're facing. Our society is changing. You can't always assume that children will be able to support their parents financially. So, are people ready for retirement? The simple answer is no. Most people are nowhere near prepared. This slide shows you the incredible, almost magical power of time. Let's say you invest the same amount of money every month. If you decide to retire at 45, you might build up a fund of around 78 lakh rupees. Sounds like a lot, but it could be gone in just a few years. Now, what if you kept doing the exact same thing for just 15 more years and retired at 60? Your money doesn't just grow, it explodes to almost 7 crore rupees. That is the difference between being comfortable for 4 years and being financially secure for the rest of your life. And the only thing that changed? Time. Patience. And that brings us to the very top of our financial pyramid. After looking at income, savings, debt, and retirement, we have to ask the big question: where does all the money in the country actually end up? The numbers here really speak for themselves. The top 1% of Indians, they control 40% of the entire country's wealth. The top 10% have over 70% of it. Now look at the other side. The entire bottom half of the population, that's over 700 million people, they collectively own just 2.5% of the wealth. This right here, this is the great wealth gap in one single powerful image. So after all of this, what's the big takeaway? Look, the numbers paint a pretty tough picture. They show a landscape where the average person is in a very fragile financial position. The point of this wasn't to solve all of the country's problems in one go. It's to give you the awareness, the knowledge to handle this reality for yourself. Real financial security doesn't come from some grand gesture or a lucky bet. It's built through the quiet, consistent discipline of saving, the wisdom of being patient, and the incredible, relentless power of compounding. The data we've looked at today, that's just the canvas. The real question is, how are you going to paint your own financial picture?